President Trump is doing a lot of great stuff in LA. First, though, this Father's Day, give your father a year of uncensored ad-free truth. Get 40% off a Daily Wire Plus gift membership right now at dailywire.com/gift with code DAD40. President Trump is sending not only the National Guard, but also the Marines into Los Angeles. Gavin Newsom and the Democrats stand with the Mexican flag-waving marauders, and Vice President J.D. Vance is memeing a deportation threat at one of the most annoying accounts on Twitter. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to this show. Really, really shocking, horrifying news. There's a study out shows Zoomers are not drinking. Gen Z is eschewing the booze. And everyone's saying this is a really good thing and it's healthy and it's whatever. I actually think it's evidence of a very bad thing. We'll get to that in a moment. First, I want to tell you about American Investment Council. Made in America means something to our country's private equity investors. When you invest $700 billion annually in American companies and the 13 million workers and families they support, you are investing in the success of Main Street. Over the last 8 years alone, America's private equity investors have contributed $5 trillion to the U.S. economy. That is money powering growth in manufacturing, tech, energy, and innovation. From strengthening supply chains to helping America lead in artificial intelligence, that kind of investment shapes our future. And it starts with private equity backing American ambition. Because investing in our people, our businesses, and our communities is not just good for the economy, it's good for the country. Learn more about how private equity keeps American small businesses growing and thriving at investmentcouncil.org. Paid for by the American Investment Council. Unbelievable stuff coming out of LA. Unbelievably good. Good as a matter of justice, yes. Really, really good politics. Really brilliant politics. Trump could not have possibly scripted this better. And he is scripting it in a way. The funny thing is, Democrats are accusing Trump of orchestrating the response to the LA deportation riots and even the deportation raids to begin with in such a way that it's going to make Republicans look really good and Democrats look really bad. And they're actually kind of right about that. That's true. However, the way he's doing that is just by doing his job and by doing what the American people elected him to do. But it is true that in doing that, it's making him look really good and it's making the Democrats look really, really bad. Trump is not only mobilizing the National Guard. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, was furious about this. He said, we're going to sue over this. You can't take over the National Guard. I get to control the National Guard. Wah, wah, wah. Trump is also now activating 700 U.S. Marines to protect federal buildings. Don't forget, the federal government owns property in the state of California. The federal government has a direct interest in protecting that property and putting down the riots. It has an indirect interest too, because it's the biggest government in the country. It's the ultimate highest government, but also it's got a direct interest. There's federal property there that needs to be protected, and Trump's going to send in the Marines. And Newsom is suing over that too. So you got the situation where Newsom and the Democrats, Newsom, who was trying to make this moderate pivot, Newsom, who's trying to launch his 2028 presidential campaign, ends up siding with the Mexican flag wavers and the keffiyeh wearers and the looters and the arsonists and the terrorists. And Trump is on the side of the American flag and the National Guard and innocent civilians and the U.S. Marines. And it just looks horrible, horrible for the Democrats. And Trump's pushing it further. Because what the Democrats are banking on is that Trump is going to be too chicken to actually do something to stop the riots. What the Democrats are banking on is that if Trump tries to stop the riots, then the violence could escalate, or it could look like he's suppressing dissent, and that's going to backfire on Trump. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen, and Trump knows it. Trump knows that most people in the country are on the side of the innocent people, the civilians, the American citizens, over the mask-wearing, all cops are bad, chanting, keffiyeh-wearing, Mexican flag-waving, looting terrorists, okay? Rioters and miscreants, all of them. Trump knows that. So when he gets these threats from the Democrats, what does he do? He comes out, he says, hey, just so you know, if you guys keep it up, if you attack our brave National Guardsmen, we're going to fight back. And the phrase he's using is, if they spit, we will hit. Because these leftists in the streets are spitting on the National Guard, and the National Guard is just supposed to take it. And Trump says, no, I am ordering you as the president. If they do that, punch them in their fat, stupid faces. Teach them a lesson that will be edifying for them, that will be educational, and that will play very well politically. The exact line, if they spit, we will hit. This is a statement from the President of the United States concerning the catastrophic Gavin Newsom-inspired riots going on in Los Angeles. The insurrectionists have a tendency to spit in the face of the National Guard's men/women and others. These patriots are told to accept this. It's just the way life runs, but not in the Trump administration. All quotes, all caps rather. If they spit, we will hit, and I promise you they will be hit harder than they have ever been hit before. Such disrespect will not be tolerated. This is the right thing to do. As I said at the top, this is the right thing to do as a matter of justice. This is actually good for the spitters and the marauders and the rioters, because it's going to teach them a lesson, and they need to learn a lesson. They've been very poorly educated up until now. But politically, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. Someone made the point, I don't remember which account it was, made the point on Twitter yesterday. I'm sorry that I don't remember, because it was a good point. You know, the libs have this mythology of the protests of the 60s. Specifically, think about Kent State. You remember the student protesters, 4 of them killed by the National Guard. Neil Young wrote that song about it. 4 dead in Ohio, 10 soldiers and wah, wah, wah. And the idea was that the American public turned against the government, the National Guard, and the establishment, the conservatives, because they struck down the 4 student protesters at Kent State in Ohio. But this account, name of which I forget, pointed out yesterday, you know, the American public was so outraged by the National Guard killing those students at Kent State that Richard Nixon went on to win 49 states. They were so outraged that they were completely on the side of the National Guard. The liberal mythology of people having a groundswell of popular support for these rioters, for these anarchists, for in the 60s it would have been Students for a Democratic Society or the Weather Underground. Today it would be Antifa or some of these left-wing anarchist cells. That's totally imagined. That is not true. In this battle going on in Los Angeles, the people are on the side of the National Guard. And they're on the side of the Marines, and they're on the side of America over Mexico, and citizens over it, and Trump over Newsom. So there's actually no political risk here, really, for Trump. Trump, who has clarity and courage in the situation. When you really look through it, there's no political risk. Yes, they spit, we hit. That is not only the right thing to do, that is a complete political winner. The public despises these lunatics burning down LA right now. Furthermore, Trump has said that masks are no longer to be tolerated at these protests. This used to be common sense. Then the libs made us all mask up during COVID, because it also helped them during that summer of love of George Floyd, the year of our Floyd, when the leftists were burning down the city the last time. Trump says no more masks. He goes, great job by the National Guard. We got an incompetent governor, Newsom, mayor, who were as usual, very slow. Federal permitting is complete, unable to handle the task. These radical left protests by instigators and paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. From now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. What do these people have to hide? Thank you to the National Guard. What are these? Yeah, no masks. No, thank you. This is another point. This is a little more subtle, but it's another point to show that Trump, in his political instincts, is conservative much more than he is libertarian. A lot of that blow up at the White House between Trump and Musk was about two factions, the political conservatives and the political libertarians, and the conservatives won yet again. I think Trump, when he says things like, we want Greenland, we want Canada, he's expressing a kind of political conservatism, a more classical kind of right-wingedism than libertarianism, which really begins as a movement out of the left. So here again, you see Trump saying, no, We ain't tolerating that. I don't want to hear any sob stories about the civil rights of the illegal alien cartel associating, keffiyeh wearing, Mexican flag waving protesters, sneaker stealing, city burning. Yeah, save it. I don't want to hear about your civil rights and your constitutional rights. And you're going to shut up. You're going to get out of the street. You're going to stop hurting people. You're going to act like a normal civilized person. Then we can talk about your rights. Get your mask off. That's my kind of conservatism, okay? Now, meanwhile, the libs are trying to insist that there's no violence going on whatsoever. We'll get to a very prominent one who's doing that. First, though, there is one area where I think conservatives and libertarians generally agree, and that is on the attractiveness of gold. That's why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. Text Knowles, Knowles, to 989898. The administration has its sleeves rolled up in streamlining monumental moves right now, but it is difficult for them to take your personal finances into account when trying to fix the country. You've got to do that. That's your job. That is why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold now from Birch Gold. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. Central banks are buying gold in record quantities, and the Rio reset is on the horizon, where BRICS nations are looking to unseat the US dollar as the global reserve. Now, as you know, I am a little bit of a gold bug. I have a fair bit of gold in my portfolio, and I'm very happy about that fact. You can find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some to store at home. Text my name, Knowles, that is Knowles, to 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. No obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers. Protect your savings today. Text the word Knowles, Knowles, to 989898. Maxine Waters, a Congress lady from California. She's been in office, I think, since the gold rush, actually. So she's been there for a long time. Maxine Waters comes out, and she is trying, I think, quite implausibly at this point, to advance the line that there is no violence at the demonstrations currently burning down LA.
Well, I was surprised at the way that the police chief was describing all of this. There had been no violence where anybody that was protesting hit anybody, shot anybody, threatened anybody. Nothing had happened. And so he doesn't know what to do, probably, because this is a sanctuary city and the police don't have the authority. All that he's got to do is work with the governor. The governor was not even called when he sent in the National Guard. The mayor was not even called. The president is initiating this purposely. He knows what he's doing.
I just want to point out, and I'm sure you know this, Congresswoman, there has been some violence in the course of these protests. Some police officers were assaulted, and some vehicles were damaged in the process.
There
has been some violence out there, right?
Exploded, lit on fire.
Well, the thing about it is you may have people, one or two or a few people, who will not conform. That happens everywhere.
Oh, man. If Maxine Waters did not exist, we would have to invent her. So she's doing a phoner with CNN, and CNN is playing images from the riots while she's on. But she's not on TV. I guess she's not seeing the images. So the images are showing a ton of violence. The rioters, the leftists attacking cops, and, they're lighting cars on fire and they're burning stuff down, they're looting. And she says, there's no violence. Why do you think there's any? And there's Wolf Blitzer, who is trying to defend the Democrat narrative here, but doesn't want to look like a complete fool. So he goes, well, I mean, there's a little bit of violence, right? What? I mean, there some cars have been damaged. Cars have been damaged. It looks like, you've got EVs exploding throughout Los Angeles. They've been a little damaged. At least someone kind of keyed them, didn't they? And, maybe one or two people. This has been going on for like 4 or 5 days now. They've been torching the city. This is weak. And now Maxine Waters is not the only person. She's just a little slower to the game, I guess. So the initial line from basically all of the Democrats was, there's no violence, and please don't have any more violence, please. But there's none anyway. You shouldn't be worried about it. But now it's totally undeniable. I mean, even CNN can't deny it. We're just seeing it all over our TV screens. And they have a deeper problem. the left, because Maxine Waters, good example of this, Maxine Waters encouraged violence against Republicans during the first Trump administration. Maxine Waters came out there, told her supporters, when you see Republicans in public, you need to push back on them. You need to tell them they're not welcome here. I mean, she was calling for her supporters to assault Republicans in public and members of the administration. So Maxine Waters can't then come out and say, well, I think we should be totally peaceful and civil with each other. That doesn't work. And the Democrats broadly can't do it. Hillary Clinton, during the first Trump admin, said, you can't be civil with Republicans. Eric Holder made similar statements. Line after line, you had Democrats calling for differing degrees of violence. So it's not just that, darn, accidentally a few bad apples are messing up our left-wing peaceful protest. This is built into the left. Going back to the origin of the term left in politics and the French Revolution, it's violent, it's radical, it seeks to uproot the political order, it is consequentialist in its ethics, it thinks that the ends justify the means. If you go all the way back to the origin of that term, it chops off the head of Queen Marie Antoinette because it takes some broken eggs to make an omelet. And so it's a problem that's just built in, and they can deny it all they like. No one's going to believe it. Here's the LAPD police chief explaining how the violence not only exists, but is escalating.
As far as people are worried about the violence that we're seeing, this violence that I've seen is disgusting. It's escalated now since the beginning of this incident. What we saw the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent to that is getting increasingly worse and more violent. Tonight we had individuals out there shooting commercial-grade fireworks at our officers. That can kill you.
Yeah, it can kill you. And by the way, the left does this regularly too. In fact, you might recall when I was at the University of Pittsburgh a year or two ago, I was giving a talk there. I was a debate over transgenderism that back before the conservatives had just completely won on that issue, after the liberals thought they had completely won on that issue. But it was still a little bit of a live issue. And a couple of these anarchist, leftist Antifa members showed up, and one of them threw a firework. And you say, oh, well, it's just a firework. As the LAPD guy says, that can kill you. And that's what the left is doing in LA right now. And that's what they've done for a long time. This isn't unprecedented. We don't need to figure out what's causing this. This is just how the left mobilizes in the streets, which is why it is so irresponsible that you have not just fringe lunatics, but mainstream lunatics like Chris Murphy. He's the Democrat senator from Connecticut, going on television, going on MSNBC, talking to Mika Brzezinski as these riots are going on. As these violent demonstrations are going on, he says Democrats need to be out in the streets.
I mean, my first message is to keep it peaceful. I mean, obviously, this is a moment where we have to be on the streets all over the country to protest what's happening to our immigrant community, but more broadly to protest what's happening to our democracy. This is the most corrupt administration in the history of the country, and we are going to rise to this moment by being out there on the streets. But ultimately, I think the country sees what Donald Trump is trying to do here. He's looking for a fight.
Notice the contradiction. Within the same breath, it says, we need to be peaceful and we need to be out in the streets. Those two things really can't go together. They certainly don't go together with the left, which gets violent basically every time it takes to the streets. But even this idea of taking to the streets, you notice Republicans don't take to the streets. Conservatives don't take to the streets. We are active in politics. We do stuff. We even win sometimes. Right now, we have basically unified government. We have the president, who was elected with the Electoral College and the popular vote. We have the House by a bare majority. We have the Senate by a little more of a cushion. And we kind of have the Supreme Court. So we win. We do things in government. We do occasionally win. But we don't take to the streets. Taking to the streets is a left-wing thing. Because taking to the streets is an intrinsically violent or at least threatening action. When you take to the streets, you block traffic, for instance. As the libs love doing, and they do it with all kinds of flimsy justifications, to protest climate change, to protest deportations, to protest war, to protest whatever. They'll shut down highways. They'll take to the streets. Taking to the streets, bringing out unruly mobs, is an intrinsically violent action because the purpose of it is to threaten and intimidate. Why do they have to take to the streets? Because they lost the election. And rather than accept the fact that they lost the election and try again next time, they're going to try to disturb the peace. They're going to burn stuff down. They're going to attack cops. They're going to spit at the National Guard, and they're going to rob sneaker stores. So don't let Chris Murphy hypnotize you. Don't let the Democrats trick you. When they say, we need to be peaceful, but we need to take to the streets, they're saying we need to be peaceful and we need to be violent. And when you say both of those things at once, all you really mean is we need to be violent. So they'll pay some lip service to don't be violent, don't be violent. What they are encouraging their people to do is to get violent because they think that they're going to cow President Trump into backing down. But Trump, because he's a tough guy and he's a New Yorker, but also because he is an astute politician, it appears he is not going to back down. Not only, I think, because it's the right thing to do, but because he knows that he's going to get the political win here. The reason the Dems are taking to the streets is because they lost, because people don't like them and they don't like what they're doing. And they're on the side of the Trump policy. Why would Trump not continue to back that up? Final point on this. Final point on what's going on in LA. The wonderful defenders of the oppressed and the beleaguered, the great diverse cultural enrichers and all the rest of it, they've decided that one way they're going to stand up for the poor immigrant communities is by robbing stores in LA. The looting has broken out. And you can see this on ABC News. This is not some right-wing news channel. You can see people roaming around LA. You can see them going around, don't seem like the most orderly civic nationalists. They're breaking in. And is that a bread store they're going into to steal food for their families? No. Is that a bookstore? Are they stealing books? I don't think they're stealing books. No. I actually can't quite tell exactly what they're looting, but I don't think this is for the cause of justice. I think this is what the left is. I think ultimately leftism is lawless. It's a revolutionary ideology that seeks to upend the civil order. And I think it's selfish. I mean that not just in a cheap way. I mean that at the level of fundamental ideology. I think it seeks to oppose God and the transcendent moral order and displace authority all the way down to the family. It's kind of F you, dad, is what leftism comes down to. And I think it seeks self-deification. The notion that the individual personal will is not accountable to anybody, anything, and not even accountable to reason. We're just going to do what we want. And we're going to take the sneakers and we're going to burn down the city. And we're going to light the cop car on fire. And we're going to spit in the face of the cops and nobody's going to tell us boo. And I think we've had enough of that. And the longer this goes on, I think the worse it's going to look for Democrats. So far, Trump's played it perfectly. He should ramp up the pressure. Now, speaking of defending yourself, you ought to check out StopBox USA. Go to stopboxusa.com, use code Knowles. Owning a handgun can put you in a tough spot. I'm just realizing as I'm reading this ad right now that I actually had a dream about a handgun last night. That's odd. Luckily I don't need to have nightmares because of StopBox. You need your gun to be secure but accessible. Most solutions force you to choose between the two. Either it's locked away when you need it most, or it's too accessible to kids or uninvited guests. With the StopBox Pro, you finally get both. Your firearm stays safely locked away, but instantly accessible when you need it. Now, as someone with little kids and with lots of irresponsible people running around the DailyWire, just generally, I can be sure that my firearms are secure from curious hands. It's very, very important. StopBox has been phenomenal in making sure firearms are kept away from all those sorts of people, but accessible quickly in the event of an emergency. It's 100% mechanical and no batteries to die, no electronics to fail, no keys to lose when you're fumbling in the dark. This is what I love about it most probably, is that it's all analog, it's all mechanical, so you don't need to worry about some glitch. For a limited time only, right now, our listeners are getting a crazy deal. Our listeners are getting 10% off your entire order when you use code Knowles, KNWLES. Right now, StopBox is also running a deal on their most popular bundle. The 2-pack saves you over 30% and comes with free accessories and shipping. 10% off, big bundle discount when you use code Knowles at stopboxusa.com. That is code KNOWLES. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with StopBox. Moving away from what's going on in Los Angeles, but just one last point on the broader immigration issue. I saw the most ridiculous defense of the Mexican flag waving marauders yesterday. This was on Twitter. Crunk on the Rocks is the account. It says, this was in response to a post that I made, actually, because I said, look, other immigrant groups have had problems and everything, but they're not currently burning down any major American cities. And this guy says, the Irish literally rioted against the Civil War draft in 1863 and lynched Black Americans in New York. That's why he's got to go back to 1863 to find a counterexample. Italian anarchists bombed Wall Street in 1920. We've actually talked about that on this show. Greek laborers in the West clashed violently with mining companies. When was that? 19th century? These ethnic groups weren't always peaceful model citizens. Selective amnesia is a wild thing. And that's a fair point. He puts a cap on it. He says, every group has a 100 years ago when they were poor, marginalized, and were blamed for society's problems. The difference isn't moral superiority. It's time, integration, and a chance to build institutions. He's kind of got a point here. But let's follow that point to its logical conclusion. How did we fix the problems caused by immigrant groups 100 years ago? He's right. Plenty of immigrant groups have caused a lot of social problems. That might be an argument against immigration as something at the heart of national policy. Reminds me of a line from Dante. Sempre la confusione delle persone fu mal della città or something. I don't know. It was, I forget. The Italian is losing me. Even the English translation is losing me. But the broad gist is always the confusion of peoples is the beginning of evil in the city. And he compares it to mixing different foods in your stomach. And that's an insight that actually goes back to Aristotle. So there are always these problems with immigration. But let's just take it in the American context. We have had a lot of immigration. How did we fix it 100 years ago? We basically stopped all immigration for like 40 years. There were all these problems in the late 19th, early 20th century with mass migration, all kinds of social problems. So what do? We had the Immigration Act of 1924. And we reduced all migration by about 85% for over 40 years. Then we had the Hart-Celler Act in the 60s, which created our present immigration problem, instituted the policy of mass migration, gave us the social problems we have now. But you're right. I don't think Mexicans are intrinsically evil or something like that. I don't think they're a defective people or anything like that. I don't really care for Mexican food, but I do like a lot of the Hispanic inclinations and behaviors, and some of the culture's great. But burning down LA is bad. And so what do we do about that? Well, probably if you want to integrate people, and you need time to do that, we need to drastically reduce all migration for like half a century at least. Are you willing to do that? How's that? If you want the solution we had in the 20th century, how about we do that? Something tells me these libs on Twitter and elsewhere would not go along with it. Now, speaking of Twitter and immigration enforcement, there's a great little saga that went on yesterday. It involved the Vice President of the United States. I will try to be pithy about this. There's this account. If you're on X, you might be familiar with this account. The account is Dye Workwear, Derek Guy. And he's this guy. His avatar is of an old, stuffy, conservative white man. He's apparently a young Asian man, but that's the avatar. And he gives men's sartorial critiques. It's a menswear account. And it's actually got pretty good content. I kind of like it. He's super liberal, so he basically only ever attacks conservatives. And he's, in principle, criticizing us over our fashion. But really, he's got this political axe to grind. So he injects his left-wing politics into everything now. But he's got decent enough insights on men's style. So anyway, he's really, really grating on a lot of conservatives on Twitter. He admitted yesterday or the day before that he is an illegal immigrant. His family came over when he was a little kid. And so and someone tweets at, doesn't even tag the guy, just tweets at, says, JD Vance, I know you're reading this and you have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever. And this is great. JD responds. And the vice president responds with that GIF of Jack Nicholson saying like, haha, yes, nodding his head along. I love it. First of all, on the substantive point, I've got a proposal for Democrats. I'm willing to offer amnesty and indeed citizenship to all estimated 16 million illegal aliens in this country, including MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, if we can deport the catty liberal Twitter account, the men's style guy. If we can do that, that's my deal. Okay? You get amnesty and citizenship for all of the. Just let me deport this one super annoying liberal account. That's putting aside the substantive issue. This response tells you a lot about our vice president. J.D. Vance, and many of you have noticed this. I've noticed this for a while. J.D. Vance is more in tune with young conservatives than any politician in the country, either party, maybe any politician in my lifetime. I can't I'm speaking specifically about young conservatives. He is online. He's not super duper very way too online like some people can get where they're just so far down a rabbit hole they can't speak to normal people in regular life. But he's online enough to get the trends of where young conservatives are compared to middle-aged or older conservatives. He's fluent in their language. And as you look ahead to 2028, that is going to give him an advantage over a lot of the other Republicans who want that job, including some who work in the Trump administration right now. This guy has a fluency to move in different circles, which I think is very important in really any politician, but certainly for conservatives, where the conservatives are so divided up. You know, the liberals basically are all progressive. They're different degrees of progressive. There are no more blue dog Democrats as there used to be, the more conservative Democrats. For the conservatives, though, you got the foreign policy realists, you've got the more adventurous types, you've got the libertarians, you got the traditionalists, you got the free traders, you got the tariff guys, you got the memey, edgy, more reactionary types, you've got the stodgy establishment, quasi-liberal types. You got everything under the sun. As it has been said before, obscure political monikers are the right-wing version of gender pronouns. So one of Trump's great advantages is he can speak to basically all those groups. He can speak to the establishment. He can speak to the edgy guys. He can speak to the youths. He can speak to the older crowd. He's fluent, so he's able to bring together a coalition of people who generally don't agree with each other. And I don't want to read too much into one meme on Twitter, but J.D. Vance seems to have that skill. And especially for someone in a younger generation, as the electorate ages up a little bit, that's impressive. And it was funny, and we should deport the menswear guy. Your dad raised you with common sense. Now give him a full year of it with DailyWire Plus. Time is running out to get 40% off a DailyWire Plus gift membership with code DAD40. That includes ad-free, uncensored shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media, plus hit titles such as Am I Racist? And Dr. Jordan Peterson's new series, Parenting, streaming exclusively on DailyWire Plus. Go to dailywire.com/gift and make Father's Day great again. My favorite comment yesterday is from Time for Thought 1, who says, City of Angels turned into hell. How ironic. I actually think it's not ironic. I get your point. But it seems ironic because Los Angeles is supposed to be the City of Angels, and now it's turned into this blazing inferno. But that's what happens. That's what happens in this fallen world. And there is a theme in American history, because we were founded largely by Puritans who and separatists who came over on the Mayflower, which is a great cigar brand, by the way. Because of that, there is this theme that moves through American history of the shining city on a hill that we're going to create in this new innocent virgin land, a new Jerusalem, a heavenly city. And we're going to be different. We're going to be exempted from the corruption of the world, from concupiscence, from the fall. We're just this special, totally exceptional thing. And that's a theme that runs down the most puritanical strains of Protestantism. That is not really a theme in high church Protestantism or Eastern Orthodoxy or certainly in Catholicism. That's not, we recognize this is a fallen world, man. And the minute you think in this world that you're going to create the city of angels, it's going to be a city of demons. The minute you think you're going to build heaven on earth, you're going to build hell. okay? Because that's how it works. Going back to Babel, at least. Now, speaking of vice and virtue, there is an infographic going around social media, and it's based on the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, oddly enough, that shows the annual expenditures that each generation is making on booze. And so the post goes, Gen Z and alcohol, a fading bond. Annual expenditure on alcoholic beverages in the U.S. by generation. Boomers, over $25 billion. More like boozers, if you ask me. Huh? Am I right? Gen X, just a little bit less, $23 billion. Millennials, a little bit more, but basically on par with Gen X, $23.5 billion. And then Gen Z, $3.13 billion, way down there. Now you might say, okay, well, some of Gen Z is still underage. I guess that's true. That's true. That accounts for some of it, but I don't think it accounts for all of it. And you've seen this from the Gen Z influencers. People will say, well, we're not that interested in alcohol anymore. There's a kind of teetotaling or apparent teetotaling that goes on with the Zoomers. They're reacting maybe against the booziness of the prior generations. Could be that. Some people are saying this is good. They're getting healthy. They're not engaging in vice. But I read something a little worse into this. I think this trend is driven in part by age. They're a little bit younger. They don't quite have a lot of money yet. Drinks at fancy bars in the cities. Most Americans live in and around cities. They've gotten kind of expensive. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. But I think what drives the rest of the gap is not people who are being super duper virtuous. I think it's being driven by loners and stoners. And I think that's actually a bad thing. Gen Z, survey after survey shows, is more isolated. And they're not unique in that way. They're just the peak thus far of a trend that we've seen for decades. Ever since Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone, that people are less social. They're not members of civic associations as they used to be. Now they don't even really go and hang out much anymore. When they hang out with people, it's often virtual, it's on cell phones, it's on FaceTime, it's on video games, sitting in their rooms alone. And generally people don't drink alone. Also, one thing that they do alone is smoke pot. So you've seen a huge rise in marijuana. And I know, I'm just going to sidestep the whole debate. People are going to say, well, actually, marijuana is way better for you than alcohol. And have you ever seen a pothead get into a bar fight? And actually, it's really healthy. And actually, it cures every disease. And actually, it's natural. And how could something natural be bad? Yeah, whatever. I'm not even getting into the debate right now over how marijuana is supposedly better than alcohol. It's not, but I'm not even getting into that debate right now. All I'm pointing out is, it's a very different thing to say, we're not having alcohol because we're going to go pray all night. And we're not having alcohol because we're going to go get blitzed out of our mind on our bong. That's different things. Okay. The place the two issues interact is that alcohol is a social lubricant. It makes you more sociable, which is good in moderation because man is a social creature. So we are most ourselves when we are living in society. We are less human when we isolate ourselves. We're not atomized individuals in our nature. Pot, marijuana, ganja, the old Peruvian parsley, it makes you less social. In my experience, having taken a few puffs now and again, it makes you less social. Booze makes you more social. If you're going to have to pick a vice, pick the social one. You see this even beyond civic associations, going to bars or whatever. Even the fact that Gen Z is dating at lower rates. That it's just this. That's not. Here I'm being a true conservative and looking at any information about the world and just saying, oh, that's actually a bad thing. But I think this is actually a bad thing. Abstinence can be fine. It can even be good. If you got a problem with alcohol, it's good for you not to have alcohol. But as this generational trend, I think this is not a good sign. Not a good sign, folks. Don't be loners and stoners, man. You got to be social. That's what Aristotle tells us to be, you know. Our Lord's first miracle, just to show you that alcohol is not intrinsically evil, our Lord's first miracle, turning water into wine for people to celebrate a wedding. It's good stuff. A wedding, which is when people are social and they get married and they have kids, which is what you need to do too. Listen up. Listen up, kids. Take it from an elderly man like me, a millennial. Okay, speaking of people like me, there's a tennis player. Her name is Coco Gauff. I had not heard of her before yesterday, but now I have heard of her. She has apparently won the French Open, and she's an American. And when she was pontificating about her victory, she said she was proud to represent, not America, but to represent people in America who look like her. That is, she's proud, not for Americans, but for Black people.
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. And, obviously there's a lot going on in our country right now with things like everything. Yeah, I'm sure you guys know. But just to be able to be a representation of that, and a representation of, I guess, people that look like me in America who maybe don't feel as supported during this time period. And so just being that reflection of hope and light for those people. And I remember, after the election, everything, it was kind of felt down period a little bit and things like that. And my mom told me, like, during Riots, just try to win the tournament just to give something for people to smile for. And so that's what I was thinking about today when holding that, and then seeing the flags in the crowd means a lot. And, some people may feel some type of way about being patriotic and things like that, but I'm definitely patriotic. I'm proud to be American, and I'm proud to represent, the Americans that look like me and people who kind of support the things that I support.
You keep using that word patriotism. I don't think it means what you think it means. She says, no, man, people feel a certain way about patriotism. And I feel that way, I mean, I'm proud to be American. I'm proud to represent Americans who look like me. Which means you're not proud to be American, you're proud to be Black. Maybe a Black American. Maybe you don't feel any kinship to a Nigerian or something, but you apparently only feel kinship to the Americans who look like you, which is not patriotism. Patriotism is love of country, including your countrymen who don't look like you. And this is where the left is at. The left, and we've known this for decades at this point, the left is not patriotic. The left doesn't love the country. The mainstream leftists say that the country is evil and was founded in sin. They try to redefine original sin. It was founded in this sin that can never be redeemed because they also reject God. So there's no redemption for the original sin of slavery or racism or Native American removal or whatever. It's just the country's evil, and you need a constant revolution to try to fix that in futility. That the America is a force for evil in the world, and we really should cede our land and our money and our technology and our borders. And this is not just a case of, look at this crazy, ungrateful young athlete who I've never heard of. It's not. She doesn't know anything. She, I guess, knows how to swing a tennis racket, and that's apparently it. She's just saying what she's heard from elite and prominent left-wingers. And what she's heard is, don't be a patriot. And unfortunately for the Democrats right now, the followers are listening. So they're going out. And if the protesters, so-called, the rioters, were smart, the Mexican ones and the anarchist ones and the keffiyeh-wearing ones and all of them, if they were smart, they would go out there, and while they're looting and robbing and setting things on fire and punching cops, they would wave the American flag. That would confuse a lot of people. This is politics 101. Wrap yourself in the American flag. They're not doing that. They can't. They're allergic to the American flag. They feel much more represented by the terrorist pride flag, the rainbow with the triangle thing and the BLM and whatever. They feel much more represented by that, or by the Palestine flag, or by the anarchist flag, or by any of these other flags than the American flag. So they can't do it. Which means you now create this scene where the political divide is clear as day for everyone, for the normie on Main Street in Palookaville, which is you have one side of the country that doesn't like the country, that doesn't have the interests of the country at heart, and you have another side of the country, the Trump side, which does care about the country, and which wraps itself in the flag, and which puts the interests of the United States first above the interests of other countries. And that's the divide. Which side is going to be more politically popular? Doesn't take a genius. And if the Democrats want to keep burning down their own cities, that's fine. Every second this goes on, it is losing them votes. Now, today is Tee Tuesday. The rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada WLES at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.